This is the iQOO 9 SE, the most affordable of iQOO's high-end 9 series phones. What makes it cheaper than the other models, and can it still offer a flagship-grade experience? I'm Will for GSM Arena, and let's find out in our iQOO 9 SE review. iQOO hasn't been around for very long, and this is the first time they are making an SE model. It's basically a cheaper iQOO 9, with some cut features here and there. Rather than more premium materials, the SE model's back is made of plastic, with a soft matte finish that shifts color as it catches light. There's also a mirror-like accent that sits below the cameras. The frame is made of plastic too, but despite that, the overall build doesn't feel cheap. The iQOO 9 SE also has some dust and splash resistance, but I wouldn't dunk it in the pool. On the front is a 6.62-inch AMOLED display with a 1080p resolution, Panda glass protection, and a 120Hz refresh rate. This high refresh rate makes movements like swiping and scrolling much smoother to the eye. But this isn't an LTPO panel like you'd get on the Pro model. While the screen will dial down to 60Hz to save energy when you stop interacting with it, it can go below that. 120Hz is sort of supported in games here, but it's not well optimized, often resulting in some stutters. Regardless, this panel is nice. Content looks crisp at 400 ppi, and blacks are deep. Although you don't get 10-bit color like on the iQOO 9, there is HDR10+ support. And colors can either pop or be very accurate depending on the color profile you choose in settings. The display is plenty bright too. We reached 480 nits maximum with the slider, and this boosts to 860 nits in auto mode when in bright sun. Not industry leading, but still flagship grade. For audio, the iQOO 9 SE has a pair of stereo speakers, with the earpiece acting as the second one. They earned a score of good in our loudness test, and the sound quality is a bit of a step down from the higher tier models, but still quite decent. For storage, you get 128 or 256 gigs, and that's not expandable. The interface of the iQOO 9 SE is Vivo's FunTouch OS 12, based on Android 12. It's just the same as what you'd find on the higher tier models. A straightforward UI which is pretty customizable looks-wise, and brings the features baked into the new Android version. You can wake up and unlock the iQOO 9 SE with the under-display fingerprint reader. It's optical rather than ultrasonic like the Pro model, but it's still fast and reliable. You don't get access to shortcuts by holding down on the fingerprint reader like you would on the Pro, but still you can assign shortcuts to the volume key and use it to launch apps or certain tasks. One of the main considerations about the iQOO 9 SE is its chipset. It's a Snapdragon 888, which you'd also find in last year's flagships. In contrast, the vanilla iQOO 9 has a Snapdragon 888 Plus, and the iQOO 9 Pro has the up-to-date Snapdragon 8 Gen 1. In real-world use, this phone is quite comparable to the iQOO 9 when it comes to performance. Plus, the thermals are decent here too. Everyday tasks run without a hitch, but gamers will run into a particular problem I've already mentioned. High frame rates are technically supported, but in practice, the poor refresh rate management leads to stuttering and poor performance there. But at least the iQOO phones bring a feature called 4D game vibration, which can provide dynamic haptic feedback in games. The iQOO 9 SE's battery capacity sits between the vanilla and Pro models at 4,500 mAh. Battery life is decent, but nothing special, with a final endurance rating of 87 hours in our tests. Charging speed, on the other hand, is on the speedy side, even though it comes with a 66-watt adapter rather than the 120-watt one you'd get on the other models. Still, in just half an hour, we were able to charge the iQOO 9 SE from 0 to 91%. Let's get into the cameras. There's a 48-megapixel main cam with OIS, a 13-megapixel ultra-wide which has autofocus, and a depth sensor. They're quite the downgrade from the Pro model, but almost the same as what you'd get on the vanilla iQOO 9, except here you're missing the gimbal OIS on the main cam and there's no telephoto. 12-megapixel photos from the main cam have plenty of resolved detail and practically no noise. Colors are quite vivid though, even oversaturated. There's also plenty of sharpening applied to these photos, and dynamic range is on the narrow side. Portraits from the main cam and depth sensor are a mixed bag. The separation is decent but not perfect, and the faces of the subjects tend to look a bit soft. There's no telephoto cam, but digital zoom from the main cam is still usable. The 13-megapixel ultra-wide camera gives pretty typical results for this sort of cam. There's a decent level of detail and moderate sharpening, but dynamic range is just okay, and there's some corner softness. The colors are too saturated, but at least they match the main cams. Since the ultra-wide cam has autofocus, you can use it to take close-up macro shots. These are much better than what you'd get from the low-res dedicated macro cams, which are popular these days. In low-light conditions, the iQOO 9 SE will automatically apply night mode processing. These shots have nice detail and are well balanced, with nicely boosted shadows and well-contained highlights. The processing is a bit aggressive though, with both heavy sharpening and oversaturated colors. You can also toggle on a dedicated night mode, and the results are very similar. The ultra-wide cam is hit or miss in low-light conditions, literally. Its autofocus is not that accurate or consistent at night. The shots that do come out in focus are decent, though not terribly sharp. Selfies are taken with the 16-megapixel front-facing cam, and the quality is solid. There's a decent amount of detail and colors look nice and natural. The selfie camera records video in 1080p. The detail level is above average, and we like the color rendition. The iQOO 9 SE can record at up to 4K at 30 FPS with its main camera. These clips have good detail, and the colors look a lot more natural than on the stills. However, highlights are easily clipped, suggesting a narrow dynamic range. The ultra-wide cam maxes out at 1080p resolution. These videos have noticeably different colors and contrast, and okay detail. Dynamic range is even more of an issue here. There is electronic stabilization available. The regular mode can work in 4K and does a great job in smoothing things out. There's also an ultra-stable mode that is smoother but crops more and is limited to 1080p. So that's the iQOO 9 SE. It offers pretty solid specs all around, not as high tier as the other models in the lineup, but still flagship grade for the most part. The only place it notably falls behind is battery life, but the fast charging somewhat makes up for that. For now, this phone is only found in the Indian market, and competition there is as heated as ever, but the iQOO 9 SE is a solid flagship killer / budget flagship and is worth recommending. Thanks for watching guys, stay safe and see you on the next one.